Hey, welcome back to another video here on FreeWill Photos. Today, we're going to take a look at how you can cut out an eye using the masking tools inside of ON1 Photo RAW. Now, you're probably wondering, like, Chris, why would I ever want to do this? Well, you may want to increase the brightness on the iris or change colors or do something more creative and unique with the eyes in a portrait. And so that's the reason why I think you would want to do this. Or maybe you want to do something weird and replace someone's eyes. So I'm going to show you 3 ways of how you can do it using ON1 Photo RAW. Let's go ahead and jump in. Here we are inside of ON1, and as you can see, we have a portrait, so pretty straightforward. Now, I'm going to demonstrate this on the local adjustments tab, but the masking techniques will be pretty much the same on all of the masking panels. So if you're using this in layers, if you're using this in the effects module, or if you're using it in local like I'm doing right now. So to go ahead and show you how to do this, the first thing that we need to do is come over here to add adjustment on the right side panel. And then we're going to come over to the option that says more. We're going to click the more icon, and then the first tool that I want to show is the Quick Mask AI. All right, it's one of my favorite tools to use. So let's go ahead and hover over this, and then we'll hit add by default. All right. Very important. When working inside of the local adjustments, you want to use add whenever you are creating a new adjustment. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And then on one, it'll take a second in some cases to render the file, or at least let the AI kind of look at the image. But since I've already kind of practiced this, it already did that. That's why it jumped in really quickly there. But with the crosshair, I can just come over here and select the eyes. Really straightforward and simple. And once I have them selected, all I have to do is come up and hit the blue check mark. Now, once you hit the blue check mark, it's going to commit that mask, and you can tell that it's done because the blue check mark has gone away from the upper right corner. But also, if I press the letter O, you can see the mask that it created. Now, in this case, it didn't quite select what I wanted. It didn't match with the selection that I used when I was hovering over it with the blue cursor, if you will. And that's okay. I think that this is still a very viable option in some cases, which is why I wanted to showcase it, because I still have a selection of the eyes here. And this may be the selection that you want to make. And that's the reason why I want to show it. Now, if I were to increase the exposure, you'll see that it makes the entire eye really, really bright. And this could be great if you're doing like some general adjustments to the eyes, but probably not what we're going for, especially if I just wanted to hone in on just the iris. All right. And so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that adjustment by clicking the X. And then I'm going to show you the second method. And this is going to be using a gradient mask. So we'll come back to the more icon over here. We'll come down to gradient, and then we'll click on add by default, because again, I want to add a new adjustment to this area. And by default, we get the linear gradient, and you can tell that because I have the linear gradient, these horizontal lines going across the image. Well, last time I checked, eyes are not rectangular or horizontal. And so what we need to do is get a round gradient. In order to do that, we're going to come up to the top portion of ON1, the upper left corner. And where it says shape, we're going to hit the drop down, and we're going to click on center. Now, what this is going to do is give us a radial gradient, or a round gradient, that we can reshape to fit the eye. Now, this method, it works really great if you're just trying to do some very general settings, but stay tuned because I am going to show you how you can do this using a more precise method of selecting the eye. And so what I'm going to do is just shrink this down by grabbing this solid line on the inside of the circle here. And I'm just going to make this really, really small. And then I'm also going to grab this dotted line, and I'm going to drag that in to make that really, really small. And essentially it's making the feather, or the fall off for this adjustment. It's making that fall off a little bit softer. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and reposition this right over the eye and drop it right there. Now, in order to really make this effect work the way that you would want, you could reshape it with being this far zoomed out, but that just isn't quite the way that I would recommend doing it. And so I'm going to hit Command and plus a few times just to zoom in, so that way we can really see what we're working with here. And now you can see I have the center of this radial gradient right over the pupil of the eye, which is where you would want this to be in this particular case. Depending on how your eyes are positioned in the frame, you'll have to make that determination. And now you'll notice that this is still too big for the eye, but I'm getting the center circle here, which is where 100% of that effect that I'm going to apply, where 100% of that effect is going to go. It's starting to go outside of the iris. And so what I want to do is grab these little white nodes and on the left and the right, and then just pull that in until it starts to shape and give me like a round shape. Now, here's my recommendation. When doing this method, what you want to do is make the inner circle just a little bit smaller than the actual eye. All right. And then what that allows you to do is pull your feather circle in and let the fall off be natural. This gives, in my opinion, the best results. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I go ahead and pull up on the exposure, you can see that just looks like a natural look for this photo. Now, if I turn this off and on, this adjustment, it's going essentially where I want it to go, but the center of the eye is actually increasing in exposure as well, and you may or may not want that. So let's say I don't want that. Well, there's ways of getting rid of that. What I'm going to do is zoom out really quick. So I'm going to hit Command and 0 just to zoom all the way out. And with Photo RAW 2026, because this is the only version of ON1 that this will work in, you can actually subtract from a mask. And if you've seen the videos, then you know where I'm going with this. But if not, just follow along. It's going to be pretty straightforward. What we're going to do is come over to our masking properties. Now, mine happens to be nested in the right side of ON1 Photo RAW. You may have a floating window, but just find your masking properties. Then what we're going to do is come down to Mask Layers, and then we will hit the plus icon to the far right of that. This is going to give us that dropout menu or that flyout menu that we have seen previously, but this time it's going to include an additional mask inside of the same adjustment. All right. So we're really modifying the mask that we initially created. So what we'll do now is come down to gradient, and then we're going to click subtract this time. And the reason is I want to remove the center of the mask that we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and click subtract, and right away it gets rid of everything in the actual photo, or at least that mask. So if I hover over, you'll notice that I have another node here that I can manipulate. Well, I want it to be round, so I'm going to come back to the shape option, and then I'm going to select center again. And then what I want to do is make this small, just like we did. So following pretty much all of the steps. Now, I will note, you will only be able to make this so small. Like, you can't make it any smaller than the default. Like, you will reach a limit, and that's why the second option is going to come in handy. All right. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and hit Command, or let's reposition this really quickly. I've made that small. I'm going to reposition this closer to this eye, and then hit Command and 0 a few times just to zoom in. Holding down the spacebar key, clicking and dragging allows me to reposition this. And we're probably like way closer to this person's eye than you would care to be. But when you're doing work like this, I really do recommend that you get as close to the section that you're working on so you can really see what you're doing. And so what I'm going to do is take this center node or center portion of our secondary node or mask removal and put that right over the middle or the iris where I want to actually remove this. And then I'm just going to shrink this down until it gets right where the pupil of the eye is. And then I'm going to take this feather and I'm going to bring that right in just to probably about there. All right. And so now I want to show you this effect. So what I'm going to do is just like crank up the exposure really, really high so you can see what just happened. I'm going to crank it up like crazy. You'll notice that the pupil of the eye is still really, really dark. And so we have successfully protected that area from getting this exposure adjustment. Now let me show you what it would look like if I didn't do that. So I'm going to come up here to masking, and then I'm just going to turn off this second gradient option because that's just the name of the mask. Hopefully one day we'll be able to rename these masks. So if I click here, you'll notice exactly what's happening. I am protecting that area and making it darker. And so that's the second method of selecting the eye. This method, it will take a little bit of time and it could yield some really great results, especially if you have a perfectly symmetrical or a close to symmetrical eye. The downside to this is you'll have to do some cleanup on the eyelid. All right. And that's the reason why I don't fully recommend this method, because the method that I'm about to show you is going to give you more precision. Before I show you that method, if you're finding value in this video, smash the like button and consider subscribing. If you are new, I make content centered around ON1 Photo RAW and other photo editing applications to help you get your creative vision out and into the world just a little bit faster. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out really quick, hit Command and 0, and we are going to delete this adjustment, and we are going to come back over to the More option. I'm going to click on More, and this time we're going to use a mask that maybe hasn't really been talked about a whole lot by many creators, and it's a very powerful mask and really lends itself well to this particular subject. All right. And that's going to be the line mask. Now, if I hover over this again, the first mask that I create with the local adjustment is usually, or it should be, the add option. So I'm going to go ahead and click add, and then that gives me an adjustment. Now, by default, I don't get access to the actual adjustment settings because I have to create the area where I want this adjustment to go. Now, if you come up here to the top, I'm going to show you these options really quickly because they do matter. I would recommend that you have your mask set to paint, and then put your feather. I would probably pull the feather down to about 18, 19, 20, somewhere in that ballpark. All right. You don't need a whole lot of feather because you're going to be way more precise than you were with the radial gradient. And now we're going to come over to our photo. After we have that selected, we'll come over to our photo. I'm going to hit Command and plus a few times just to zoom in. Again, when doing work like this, it's always a good idea to get as close to the work area that you need to get, so that way you can be as precise. What I've seen a lot of people do with the line mask tool when they're masking round things is they'll do something like this, where they click and then they click and then they click and then they click, and you get the point, right? This is how a lot of people that I've watched use this tool over the past couple years that the tool has been inside of ON1. This is how they would create their mask. And then they would click here to apply the adjustment, and we'll say that that's okay. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And you can see this actually didn't do a terrible job. You could get away with this, but I want to show you a more precise way of using the line mask tool. If anything, you at least learned the technique of using this particular tool. So let's go ahead and right click. We'll hit reset to reset that mask completely. And I'm just going to start over with a brand new adjustment just to make this easier. So click on More and then come to Line, hit Add. And so I have all of my settings where they need to be. What I'm going to do is come up to the upper corner where the eyelid and the iris start to meet. And then I'm going to click one time. Then I'm going to just go straight across to the other section of the eye where the eyelid and the iris meet, like right before it starts to curve. So maybe somewhere around here makes sense. So I'll click there. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom. and I'm going to click right where the iris and the eyelid meet as well. And then I'm going to do it again right over here. Maybe right there is good. And then to close this off, I'm going to go back to the first node and I'm going to click. You'll notice that I get like a little circle next to my crosshair. So before I hover over that final node, I don't get anything. As soon as I hover over that final node, I get a little circle next to my crosshair. That's letting me know that I can close the path. And so if I click there, I have successfully selected the eye. I'm kidding. You're probably wondering like, well, Chris, why did you make a terrible square around the eye? Well, the line tool actually comes with a really cool feature where you can bend these lines, and this gives you the smoothest transition between all of your points. So what you have to do, and this is also another reason why you want to be zoomed in, what you have to do in order to access this is hover over the line, and you'll notice there's like a little circle in between the square nodes. So if you look at the square node at the top and the square node at the bottom here, you'll notice there's like a little circle in there. Well, this allows me to bend this line. And so if I click and drag this out and just bring it to the curvature of the actual eye, well, now I'm starting to get a rounded shape. And I can do this all the way around the eye. So I'll bring that to just the edge of the iris there, or like where the iris and the eyelid meet, and then do it again by pulling all the way out here. And notice that if I pull up and down, I can really start to shape this to go into the curve or to fit the natural curve of the iris. And I think that this is one of the most slept on tools inside of ON1. And it's mostly because no one really talks about it. So I'm sorry that I haven't talked about it, but here we are today. And now you are a little bit more educated. And so I'm going to do this last one right up here, probably right around there. And then I'm going to hit the plus icon, and I have successfully selected the center of the eye. Now, I don't have an adjustment on here, and so I'll just go ahead and hit the blue check mark to commit that. And then if I pull up on the exposure, you can see I now have like a perfect selection. And then you're probably wondering, well, Chris, how do I get rid of that center portion if I needed to with this technique? Well, I'm glad you asked. You do the exact same thing. You'll come up to masking, you'll hit the plus icon, and then you'll come down the line. This time we're going to select subtract. And let me restate that. So to subtract it, what we need to do is come to our masking properties for the adjustment that we're working on. And then we're going to come down to where it says mask layers, hit the plus icon. Sorry, missed that there. Hit the plus icon, come down to line, and then click on subtract. All right. Be careful that you're not hitting the more next to the add adjustment, because that's just going to create a new adjustment. What we want to do is modify the mask that we just created. And so now we have a perfect circle. So you're probably wondering like, well, Chris, how do you actually deal with this one? Well, in the exact same way. What we're going to do is start somewhere where I think the top should be. We'll say it's like right here. And then we're just going to come straight across. And then we're going to come straight down. And then we're going to come straight across again. And we'll close the loop. Then I'm just going to grab these little nodes and drag this around until everything is where it needs to be. And you'll notice that now my paint bucket actually has a -1, or I'm sorry, a negative sign on it, or a minus sign on it. That's telling me that this is going to erase from this section. So if I click here, I have now successfully protected that section. And so we can hit the blue check mark to commit this, and we'll take a look at our work. So this is with the inner circle not being cut out, or the pupil of the eye not being cut out. And this is with the pupil of the eye being protected. Now, once you have your mask completed, it's better to just hit Command and 0 to zoom out, because you don't want to make your adjustments that close to the eye, because you want to take your adjustments in full context of the actual photo. And so it's always good to zoom out. And then what you can do is start making your adjustments. And so we would just pull this up, maybe to about there, maybe even give this a little bit of vibrance if we wanted to really like add some flare to the eye, maybe even saturate it just a touch, and maybe even give it some structure. I don't know. You could go all over the place with how you want to edit. So there you have how you can cut out an eye. Now, of course, if you want to learn how to use ON1 a little bit faster, consider signing up for a training call with me. You'll find a link for that down in the description box below. If you want to pick up ON1 Photo RAW and save some money in the process, or maybe you want to purchase a course over on the ON1 website, consider using my coupon code and the affiliate link down in the description box below. I do make a commission from everyone who uses it, but that's at no extra charge to you. It's a great way of supporting the channel. It's a win-win. If you got questions, leave them in the comment section below. And until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.